Hey there. So, in video games, player conditioning is when a player's previous experiences shapes their expectations and behavior in the future. For example, somebody who's playing Super Mario Bros. For the first time, and who doesn't know anything about the game, doesn't have many expectations at all. When a player is killed by a Goomba for the first time, it shapes their expectations and behavior in the future. Now that they expect Goombas to kill them, they'll shape their behavior to jump over them. That's not necessarily the end of the conditioning, though, because the player simply has a new expectation. That
And that expectation can be betrayed. If a player who's conditioned to avoid Goombas entirely accidentally falls on a Goomba, they'll learn that the Goomba can be defeated by jumping on it. This changes their expectations and shapes their behavior in the future. What was now an incredibly dangerous enemy is something that you simply jump on. Now, back in the day, games made you read a manual to understand the basics, but now games are a bit better than that, and they have an in-game tutorial that teaches you how to play while giving you the experience that you need to get started. OS does this by first showing you what the objects do with the storyboard, and then giving you a few to click on. The tutorial is pretty simple, and it leaves the player with some simple expectations. When you see a circle, click on it to the music. When you see a slider, click on it, hold and follow it to the end. When you see a spinner, click and start spinning. These are all very surface level expectations though, and they aren't going to prepare you for everything. In fact, one of my earliest memories of the game in 2009 was pretty much fresh out of the tutorial I started playing the game, and I discovered that objects don't have to be by themselves, they can be overlapping and stacked on top of each other. I realized this because I missed a circle that was underneath a slider end. I didn't know that they could do that. I can't see the circle, and I'm conditioned to look for circles to click on. From that point on, I started paying attention to approach circles, because that was the more reliable way to see if something was hiding under another object. Oh wait, there's a new tutorial. Yeah, so the new tutorial sets you up with the same expectations. You look for a circle and you need to click on it. So when you see a Uh-oh! Wow, you're hitting them with stacks before they've even played a slider? Nice. Well, that's a crash course in stacks anyway. This will condition players to look for approach circles real quick. Or it'll make them horribly confused. One or the other. Anyway, another example of this stuff is how players eventually learn that they don't have to follow a slider body. They'll see all these ridiculous things like repeat sliders that go really, really fast, and then they'll realize, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to move anywhere. I'll just complete the slider if I stay still. That logic, of course, stretches to, hey, I don't have to actually follow the slider, I just have to kinda follow the slider. Now, unfortunately, I can't cover everything that a player learns, because I don't know what that is. Nobody does. Conditioning is shaped on your experiences with the game, and people with different hardware and who play different maps are going to have wildly different experiences. Designing around conditioning is a guessing game, and the less you have to guess, the easier time you'll have. That's why a lot of people map around their own skill level. They know what they expect, so they can map around their own expectations. It's much harder to map for people who are better than you or people who are worse than you. With all that out of the way, let's start talking about conditioning in individual maps. Conditioning during a map is teaching the player what to expect and how to respond while the map is still going. For example, let's say a song switches from 1/4 beat to 1/3 beat. The player isn't going to know that unless they already know the song, so the mapper can use some tricks to try and teach the player that it's going to happen. A commonly used tactic is to start a section like this with a slider. That way the player doesn't have to acknowledge that it's a 1/3 beat until they've heard a few beats already. Another trick is to set up very specific spacing in the map. Spaced streams can be used to represent 1/4, while very compressed streams can be used to represent 1/6. Usually this is taught with the slider method first and then demonstrated later with spacing. All of this design is meant to avoid trial and error as much as possible. The goal is for a map to be 100% readable on the very first play. This is another reason why you see lots of maps deliberately putting new combos on white ticks. For players who are conditioned to look for new combos on white ticks, it makes playing complicated stream maps a lot easier. A new combo means a white tick, so wait for the white tick to click on it. Simple. Naturally, this doesn't work on any skins that disable that stuff, and on anybody who plays newer maps that don't do this. I miss 2012. Anyway, to summarize it all, conditioning inside of a map is teaching the player what they have to do before they actually have to do it. How you actually teach the player is up to you, but usually a slider's good enough. This microphone's pretty cool and all, but it's picking up my chair creaking.
Oh, and one more thing. When you're making a change to the game, or to one of your own maps, you need to be careful and consider what will happen to player conditioning when you do it. Something for a joke might be funny, but it might result in a worse experience. Of course, you can't know for certain what it's going to do, but you can at least speculate, and oftentimes that's good enough. Switching back to the good mic.
So, let's speculate. In Laser, a proposed change is to allow mappers to choose the overall difficulty of individual objects. This means allowing for some circles to have OD 8 and other circles to have OD 10. Now, let's quickly speculate on how this would change player conditioning. A player playing a map set to OD 8 may come across a circle that is OD 10. Upon encountering this, they'll realize that they can't really be sure what the OD of the entire map is, so they will play it like an OD 10 map even though it's an OD 8 map. This may lead to the player treating every single map like it's OD 10 and having no time to relax with their accuracy. A tool to give mappers more freedom in how they punish the player has irreparably damaged how players play maps. Of course, this is all speculation, this hasn't happened yet, but it might, and that's what speculation's all about, figuring out the future before it happens. Or at least, trying your best. Oh, wait, I haven't shoehorned in slider accuracy yet. So, let's speculate. What would actually happen if slider accuracy were implemented? Well, FishyFat actually already did this. He made a video on slider accuracy in 2017 that pretty much covers most of the flaws with the system. He outlines many of the tricks mappers use to handle player conditioning and points out that they might not work in the future.
Complex timing, irregular rhythm, the shortening of a slider's hit window caused by length, strenuous gameplay. As should be clear by now, Charles was never actually good.
That video covers the issues of slider accuracy better than I ever could, so you should probably watch that instead of listening to me talk. He then says that he is okay with it if it means that he gets to change the circle size of objects. So, this is where I stop talking. Go watch that video! Link's in the description.